people who have been cheated on. What's the best revenge you got without ever being caught? I discovered my husband's affair on our 10th anniversary, not with dramatic screaming or thrown plates, but with absolute silence as I stared at the receipt that fell from his jacket. Dinner for two at Nouvelle, the city's most expensive restaurant, $347 plus a $100 tip, on a Tuesday when he told me he was working late. The receipt wasn't the real evidence. It was the lipstick shade scribbled on the back, Crimson Confession Thar 8, with a phone number. It was the reservation made for Mr. Evans and guest when my last name is Chen. It was how he'd stopped touching me months ago, claiming stress from his promotion. 10 years of marriage, 3 miscarriages, a mortgage we'd struggled to afford so he could be closer to his office, all while I put my career on hold, supporting his ambitions. I didn't confront him. That night, I smiled through our anniversary dinner as he checked his phone under the table. I wore the necklace he'd gifted me, clearly purchased by his secretary, who knew my taste better than he did. "Happy anniversary, babe," he said, distracted. To many more. I clinked glasses, watching him over the rim, to getting exactly what we deserve. He didn't notice how my smile never reached my eyes. The next morning, I created a new email account and contacted a digital security firm. Not the kind that protects, the kind that invades. It cost me $5,000, nearly emptying my secret savings account that he never knew about. By week's end, I had everything. Her name, Vanessa Moore. Age, 26, 11 years younger than me. Occupation, junior partner at his law firm. The affair had lasted 7 months. I had their texts, emails, hotel receipts, photos taken through restaurant windows, audio recordings from his late meetings. I knew that in her bathroom cabinet, she kept a toothbrush with his initials, that she was allergic to shellfish and afraid of heights, that he'd told her I was emotionally unavailable after losing our babies, that they were planning a weekend in Barbados, charged to our joint account. I learned she'd just bought a condo, that she wore size 6 shoes and favored silk bathrobes, that she left her balcony door unlocked on hot nights, that she lived alone with a cat named Pixel. What I did with this information unfolded over 6 careful months. I never raised my voice, never shed a tear where he could see, never gave the slightest hint I knew. My revenge began with research. Each night while he slept, I'd sit in our guest bathroom with the shower running, reading divorce laws and documenting our finances. I discovered hidden accounts, suspicious withdrawals, and tax discrepancies spanning years. I created spreadsheets, saved statements, recorded conversations, a meticulous archive of every betrayal, financial and emotional. 5 weeks in, I found the envelope of cash in his golf bag, $24,000 that had never been declared on our taxes. I photographed it, then replaced it exactly as I'd found it. Meanwhile, I became the perfect wife. I packed his favorite lunches, arranged dinner parties with his colleagues, even lost 15 pounds through what I called stress yoga, but was actually calculated preparation. He barely noticed, too consumed with Vanessa to see the predator I was becoming. One night, he mentioned his firm was bidding on a major contract with Keller Industries. "That's wonderful," I said, refilling his wine. "When will you know if you got it?" "Soon," he replied. "But it's practically guaranteed. Just don't mention it to anyone yet. Insider trading concerns and all that." I nodded, kissing his cheek. Then I emailed his competitor from a burner account, providing just enough information to make them competitive without revealing my source. His firm lost the contract. His promised partnership stalled, while he drowned his sorrows with Vanessa at the Parkview Hotel, room 718, $329 per night charged to his corporate card. I was making friends with her neighbors. Nothing suspicious, just a new yoga enthusiast who happened to bring homemade kombucha to the community garden. Within weeks, I knew everything about her building's security system, which had been installed by the same company that protected our home. I created my alternate identity carefully. Sarah, a freelance graphic designer who worked from coffee shops and wore no wedding ring. Sarah, who started attending the same spin class as Vanessa's sister, who complimented her shoes and suggested a happy hour that turned into a friendship, who expressed interest in investing and was introduced to Vanessa's financial advisor, the same one handling the money for her new condo. "You need a security system," I mentioned casually during drinks. "My ex's place was broken into last month. I can recommend the company that fixed his setup." By month 3, I knew my husband was planning to leave me after securing his partnership. I'd seen the apartment listings in his search history, found the consultation with a divorce attorney in his calendar, disguised as a dental appointment. I began transferring small amounts into my personal account. Nothing suspicious, just enough to build a safety net. I updated my resume and took online courses to refresh my skills after years away from my career. I reconnected with former colleagues under the guise of just catching up. On weekends, when he claimed to be golfing with clients, I visited my mother, collecting the family heirlooms that had always been mine. I quietly replaced our shared photos with identical copies, sending the originals to a storage unit rented under my maiden name. I cultivated friendships with the wives of his colleagues, positioning myself as devoted, but naive. At dinner parties, I'd touch his arm lovingly. "Robert works so hard. Sometimes I don't see him for days." The wives would exchange glances, their pity evident. Those same wives became invaluable sources of information, mentioning late nights when they'd seen Robert, but not at the office. When Vanessa's building experienced a minor security breach, I was ready. I'd already befriended the security consultant who arrived to update their system. My background in IT, the career I'd abandoned to support Robert, made our conversation natural. By afternoon's end, I understood exactly how their new protocols worked. Patience is the cornerstone of perfect revenge. I waited until their Barbados trip was just 1 week away. Robert came home with the scent of her perfume on his collar, kissed my cheek distractedly, and announced he had a week-long conference in Chicago. "I'll miss you," I said, handing him his favorite drink. "I'll call every night," he promised, already texting her under the table. The next morning, I called in sick to the elementary school where I volunteered. Instead, I drove to the strip mall across town and purchased a prepaid phone. Then I visited a college friend who worked in hospital administration. "It's for a thriller I'm writing," I explained, as she described how medical record systems worked, where security cameras were positioned, and what protocols surrounded sensitive patient information. That night, Robert worked late again. I used the time to send an email from my burner account to his firm's HR department, expressing concerns about inappropriate relationships between partners and associates. I was careful, just vague enough to prompt attention without targeting anyone specifically. The following day, I visited the pharmacy where Vanessa filled her prescriptions. I didn't do anything illegal, just stood in line behind her, noting her medication while pretending to check my phone. Later, I researched what those drugs were prescribed for: anti-anxiety medication, birth control, and something for an autoimmune condition she'd never mentioned to Robert, according to their texts. 3 days before their trip, I made my first truly active move. While Robert slept, I accessed his laptop using the password I'd watched him enter countless times. I forwarded compromising emails to my secure account, then booked a surprise couples therapy session for the exact time they planned to be at the airport. "We need this," I told him over breakfast. "I've been feeling disconnected." "I can't," he said immediately. "Work emergency that day." I let my eyes fill with tears. "It took months to get this appointment." He sighed dramatically. "Fine, I'll move some things around." He canceled moments after I left for my volunteer shift. I watched the notification arrive on my phone and smiled. That afternoon, I put on a wig and glasses and went to the coffee shop below Vanessa's office. As expected, she was there, finalizing preparations for their trip. I sat close enough to hear her order: soy milk, extra shot, light ice, before leaving. The next day, I waited until Robert left for work, then called Vanessa's office. "This is Dr. Warner's office," I said to the receptionist. "We've had a testing irregularity with Vanessa Moore's recent blood work. It's probably nothing, but with her condition, the doctor wants to repeat the test before she travels." 2 hours later, I watched from my car as Vanessa entered the medical building. I gave her 15 minutes, then called her cell from my prepaid phone. "Ms. Moore, this is airport security. We've flagged a potential issue with your upcoming travel. Could you verify your destination and dates?" I listened as she confirmed everything: flight numbers, hotel, return date. "Thank you," I said. "This appears to be a mistake in our system. Enjoy your trip." That night, Robert came home with roses and takeout from my favorite restaurant. "I've been distant," he said. "Work has been crazy. Let me make it up to you." It was guilt, not affection. The roses had been bought at the supermarket across from Vanessa's condo. I knew because I'd followed him there. "I was thinking," I said, twirling pasta on my fork, "we should update our wills. With all these school shootings in the news, it got me worried about the future." He looked startled. "Our wills are fine, but we did them before your promotion. The assets have changed." I sipped my wine. "Unless there's something you don't want me to know about?" He agreed too quickly, attempting to change the subject. I let him, knowing I'd planted the seed. The day before their trip, I executed the first part of my endgame. I sent an anonymous email to the hotel in Barbados, expressing concerns about a guest planning to smuggle something illegal. I included their reservation details and Robert's history of carrying large amounts of cash. Then I forwarded evidence of his financial improprieties to the firm's senior partners from an email account that appeared to belong to a concerned client. At midnight, Robert's phone rang. He took the call in the bathroom, but I could hear the panic in his voice. When he emerged, his face was ashen. "Problem at work?" I asked innocently. "Just a client issue," he lied. "Nothing serious." I knew the partners had called an emergency meeting for first thing in the morning. His Barbados flight would leave at 11 a.m. The timing was perfect. As he left for the office the next day, I kissed him goodbye as usual. "Don't forget we have dinner with the Millers tonight," I said, a dinner I'd never actually scheduled. "Right," he said distractedly. "See you then." He wasn't going to make it to the airport. The partners would keep him all day, discussing the financial irregularities that had mysteriously come to light. While he was gone, I visited Vanessa's condo building, dressed as a delivery person with a package that required a signature. I knew from my research that she'd already be at the airport, alone, waiting for Robert. The security guard, the same one who'd seen me with her sister, waved me up. I didn't break in. I didn't have to. I simply left the package. A Barbados travel guide with a note that read, "Something came up, can't make it. Will explain later." R at her door, clearly visible to the hallway camera. Then I drove to the airport and watched from the terminal as she repeatedly called Robert, her face crumbling when he didn't answer because he was in meetings with increasingly suspicious partners. I watched her eventually board the plane alone, unaware that her romantic getaway had just become a very expensive solo trip. Robert didn't come home that night. At 3 a.m., he called from a hotel near his office. "Emergency with the Keller situation," he slurred, clearly drunk. "Might need to fly to their headquarters tomorrow. Don't wait up." "Of course," I said. "I understand." While he was dealing with the professional implosion I'd orchestrated, I was implementing the final phase of my plan. I emptied our joint accounts into a new one under my maiden name. I reported our savings bonds stolen and had them reissued to my private P.O. box. I transported the last of my personal treasures to my storage unit. And I visited a divorce attorney, the most ruthless one in the city, bringing my meticulously documented evidence of Robert's affair, financial deceptions, and tax fraud. "Mrs. Evans," she said after reviewing my files, "I've been practicing family law for 27 years, and I've never seen someone come in this prepared." "I believe in being thorough," I replied. When Robert finally came home 2 days later, he looked destroyed. The partnership was on hold pending an investigation. His corporate credit cards had been suspended, and Vanessa had gone radio silent after discovering he'd stood her up for a half-empty resort in Barbados. "We need to talk," he said heavily. I nodded, the perfect picture of a concerned wife. "What's wrong, honey?" "It's complicated." He rubbed his face. "Work stuff. You can tell me anything," I said, touching his hand. "We're partners, remember?" The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. He manufactured a story about corporate restructuring and temporary financial constraints. Asked if I would mind if we economized for a while. I agreed immediately, presenting the devoted wife ready to sacrifice. That night, as he slept the exhausted sleep of a man whose life was unraveling, I sent one final email to Vanessa from his account that I'd long since accessed. "I can't do this anymore. My wife is pregnant. I'm sorry. I wasn't pregnant, of course." But the doubt would linger in Vanessa's mind, especially after I started wearing loose clothing and declining alcohol at company functions, just enough to feed the rumor mill that would eventually reach her. For 3 more weeks, I played my role flawlessly: supportive wife, financial partner, understanding ear for his increasingly desperate explanations. I even suggested we downsize, offering to look at smaller houses, acting completely unaware that we couldn't qualify for a new mortgage with his finances in shambles. The final act came on a Tuesday, exactly 3 months after discovering his affair. He came home to find me sitting calmly at the kitchen table. In front of me were printouts, the hotel receipts, the text messages, the photos of him with Vanessa. "What is this?" he asked, though he knew exactly what it was. "Sit down, Robert," I said quietly. His face cycled through emotions: shock, fear, anger, calculation. I could see him formulating denials, excuses, counter-accusations. Before he could speak, I placed another stack of papers beside the first: his hidden accounts, tax discrepancies, proof of embezzlement from client funds, the financial crimes that were far more serious than his affair. "You should know," I said as his face went pale, "that copies of these are with my attorney. And these," I slid the third stack forward, "are divorce papers." "You can't," he began. "I already have," I interrupted. "Your partners received anonymous evidence of your financial improprieties. The IRS has received an anonymous tip about your undeclared income, and Vanessa believes you abandoned her because I'm carrying your child." He stared at me, finally understanding. "You did this," he whispered. "All of it." I smiled for the first time in months, a real smile that reached my eyes. "This house is paid for in my name," I continued. "The investments are secured in accounts you can't access. Your career's over, Robert. Your girlfriend thinks you're a liar, and your options are these." I slid the divorce papers closer. "Sign these now, agreeing to my terms, which are actually quite reasonable given what I know, or tomorrow the district attorney receives evidence of your crimes." "You vindictive bitch," he hissed. "You've been planning this for months." "No," I corrected him. "I've been executing this for months. I planned it in a single night while you slept beside me after fucking her." He lunged forward, but I was prepared. The recording device was already running. "That's assault to add to infidelity and financial crimes," I said calmly. "Not your best move." In the end, he signed. What choice did he have? The terms were brutally straightforward. The house and 70% of our assets remained with me. He kept his car, personal possessions, and enough money to start over somewhere less expensive. Most importantly, he signed a non-disclosure agreement preventing him from ever discussing our marriage or divorce. "You won't get away with this," he said as he signed the final page. "I already have," I replied. "In fact, no one will ever know what happened except you and me. To everyone else, we simply grew apart. I'll speak kindly of you in public, express sadness about our separation, perhaps even shed a tear at dinner parties." He stared at me with hatred and something else, a dawning respect. "The perfect crime," he said bitterly. "Not a crime at all," I corrected. "Just justice." 3 days later, he moved out. The firm's investigation continued, but without enough evidence for criminal charges. His reputation, however, was destroyed. No law firm in the city would touch him. Vanessa had already begun dating a surgeon she met in Barbados. As for me, I returned to my career, sold the house for a comfortable profit, and moved to a lakeside cottage I'd secretly purchased months earlier. I volunteered at a women's shelter, teaching classes on financial independence. I traveled. I thrived. Sometimes at night, I think about what I did and feel a moment of remorse. Not for him, but for the woman I had to become to survive him. Then I remember how he described me to Vanessa in those texts. Emotionally broken after losing our babies. A convenient housewife. A stepping stone to something better. And I sleep just fine. 2 years later, I received a text from an unknown number. I know what you did. I stared at the message, heart pounding. Had I missed something? Left evidence? Was Robert finally making good on his threat? Then a second message appeared. This is Vanessa. Can we meet? She was waiting at a coffee shop downtown, looking older than her years. The promising legal career had stalled after the scandal. New firms asked too many questions about her abrupt departure from Robert's company. How did you know? I asked after we'd settled with our drinks. I didn't. Not really, she admitted. But things didn't add up. The timing was too perfect. The professional implosion, the financial disasters, the pregnancy that never seemed to materialize. It felt orchestrated. I said nothing, neither confirming nor denying. He didn't just cheat on you, she continued. He cheated on me too. There were others. This surprised me. My investigation hadn't revealed additional affairs. After you, he moved to Cincinnati, Vanessa said. Got a new job, a new girlfriend. But old habits die hard. He embezzled from them too. Got caught. Now he's facing charges. I sipped my coffee, wondering why she'd contacted me. I'm not here for an apology, she said, reading my expression. What we did to you was unforgivable. I'm here because... She hesitated, then pushed a file folder across the table. Inside was a business proposal. A consulting firm specializing in helping women navigate financial separation from abusive partners. All legal, all ethical, but using the same investigative techniques I'd employed against Robert. Your skill set is unique, she said. And there are so many women who need what you know. I studied her face, looking for traps, for hidden motives. Why would I trust you? I finally asked. You shouldn't, she answered immediately. Trust the business plan, the market research, the financial projections. I've spent a year developing this while working at a shelter. The need is real. And your role would be? Legal consultation. Many of these women need attorneys who understand financial abuse, who won't judge them for staying too long or for fighting back. I closed the folder. I'll think about it. As I stood to leave, she caught my arm. He told me you were cold, she said quietly, incapable of passion. But it takes a burning passion for justice to do what you did. I underestimated you. He underestimated you. I don't want to make that mistake as a potential business partner. 6 months later, Phoenix Consulting opened its doors. Our tagline, printed in small text on understated business cards, rising from the ashes of what tried to destroy you. We never advertised our services. We didn't need to. Women found us through whisper networks, through shelter referrals, through the quiet solidarity of survivors. To the public, we were just another financial consulting firm. To our clients, we were salvation. And on the wall of my private office, visible only to me, hangs a small framed receipt from Nouvelle Restaurant. A reminder that the best revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about becoming unstoppable. The firm grew rapidly. Within 2 years, we had offices in 3 cities, all places with concentrations of wealth and consequently concentrations of entitled men who discarded wives like upgrade-ready smartphones. Our services weren't cheap, but we operated on a sliding scale. Wealthy clients subsidized those with fewer resources. We took pro bono cases when we identified women in particularly dangerous situations. What we did existed in a gray area. Not quite legal investigation, not quite therapy, not quite financial advising. We were careful to maintain appropriate licenses and certifications, to document everything defensively, to always stay on the right side of the law. Our staff expanded to include forensic accountants, private investigators, cybersecurity experts, and therapists specializing in trauma recovery. Many had their own stories of betrayal. All were committed to our mission. We helped women recover assets hidden in offshore accounts, documented patterns of emotional and financial abuse that strengthened custody cases, taught clients to protect themselves digitally, to recognize gaslighting, to rebuild financial independence. I rarely worked directly with clients anymore. My face was too valuable to keep anonymous. Instead, I managed operations, directed investigations, and trained new staff in what I called ethical infiltration. It wasn't revenge we offered. It was restoration, the chance to reclaim what had been stolen: dignity, security, identity. Vanessa handled the legal strategy, building a network of attorneys across the country who understood our approach. Our relationship remained professional, layered with mutual respect and the silent acknowledgement of our complicated history. Then Robert reappeared. The news came through our monitoring system, which tracked certain names across legal databases. He'd served his 18 months for financial fraud and was working at a small firm in Phoenix, ironically close to our newest office. I dismissed it as irrelevant until a new client arrived. Patricia Weber, 41, married to Jonathan Weber for 12 years, children aged 10 and 8, suspected her husband was having an affair with a colleague. During her intake interview, our investigator noted a detail that flagged the case for my attention. Jonathan Weber's law firm had recently hired a new associate, Robert Evans. I studied Patricia's file carefully. The pattern was identical: secret accounts, unexplained absences, gaslighting when she questioned anything, the deprecating comments about her intelligence, her appearance, her emotional stability. My first instinct was to recuse myself from her case. Too personal, too close. My second instinct was to burn Jonathan Weber's life to the ground. I did neither. I'd like to take Mrs. Weber's case personally, I told our management team. I think my experience is particularly relevant here. Vanessa gave me a sharp look. Does this have anything to do with the new hire at Weber's firm? Perhaps, I admitted. But my interest is purely professional. She didn't believe me. I wouldn't have believed me either, but she nodded. Just remember what we tell our clients. The goal isn't revenge, it's justice. I met Patricia the following day. She was a younger version of who I had been. Educated, accomplished, exhausted from trying to hold everything together while her husband systematically dismantled her self-worth. I feel crazy, she said, twisting her wedding ring. Some days I convince myself I'm imagining things. You're not crazy, I assured her, and you're not alone. I didn't tell her about Robert, not yet. Instead, I outlined our approach. The documentation, the financial tracking, the strategic planning for whatever outcome she wanted. I don't know what I want, she admitted. Part of me still loves him. Is that pathetic? It's human, I said, and it's your choice. We're not here to tell you to leave. We're here to give you options. She chose to begin with surveillance, wanted concrete evidence before making any decisions. We assigned our best investigator. Within 2 weeks, we had it. Jonathan Weber was indeed having an affair with a paralegal at his firm. They met 3 times weekly at an apartment paid for through a shell company he'd established. What we hadn't anticipated was that Robert was also involved, not with the affair, but with Jonathan's financial arrangements. He was helping establish offshore accounts, creating legal cover for money laundering, essentially setting up the same system he'd used to hide his own assets. In our conference room, Patricia stared at the evidence. Photos, bank statements, transcripts of conversations. How could I not see it? She whispered. Because he worked very hard to hide it, I replied. Because people like your husband and the men who enable him are practiced at deception. It's not a reflection on you. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. What do I do now? That depends, I said. Do you want to stay? Or do you want to leave? I want him to hurt like I'm hurting. I understood that impulse all too well. Revenge feels good in the moment, I told her. But justice lasts longer. And rebuilding your life lasts forever. She thought for a long moment. I want both, justice and a new life. I smiled. Then let's make that happen. We developed a strategy specific to Patricia's situation. Unlike my scorched earth approach with Robert, hers was more measured. We documented the affair and the financial crimes but didn't expose them immediately. Instead, we helped her secure her own financial position, establish independent credit, and gather evidence systematically. You're teaching me to be a spy in my own marriage, she said during one of our planning sessions. I'm teaching you to protect yourself, I corrected. One evening, as we were reviewing new evidence, Patricia asked the question I'd been dreading. You seem to have personal experience with this. Did your husband cheat too? I considered deflecting, but decided on honesty. At least partial honesty. Yes, I said. And I handled it. Decisively. Is that why you started this company? Partly. I realized there were many women in similar situations without the skills to navigate them. She studied me. There's more to it than that. I sighed. There's always more. But right now, we need to focus on you. The next day, our investigator brought news that changed everything. Robert and Jonathan were expanding their operation, recruiting other attorneys into their financial scheme. They had approached Patricia's brother, a junior partner at another firm. They've invited your brother to a meeting tomorrow night, I told Patricia, to explain their system. Her face hardened. Oliver would never participate in something illegal. Probably not knowingly, I agreed. But they're very good at making these arrangements appear legitimate. She made a decision then. I want to warn him, and I want him to help us. Oliver Weber turned out to be a crucial ally. Shocked by our evidence, he agreed to attend the meeting wearing a recording device. The transcript he provided documented everything. Robert and Jonathan explicitly describing how they helped wealthy clients hide assets during divorces, evade taxes, and launder questionable income through seemingly legitimate businesses. This is beyond a divorce case now, Vanessa warned during our strategy meeting. We're looking at federal crimes. I nodded, which gives Patricia extraordinary leverage. What followed was the most elegantly executed client resolution in our firm's history. Patricia confronted Jonathan with 2 options: a quiet divorce with extremely favorable terms, or exposure of his criminal enterprise. How did you figure this out? He demanded, face pale as he reviewed the evidence we'd assembled. I had help, she replied simply. He chose the quiet route, of course, signed over the house, agreed to generous child support and alimony, relinquished claims to her business, and most importantly, granted her primary custody of their children. As for Robert, we handled him differently. Once Patricia's settlement was finalized and legally binding, we anonymously sent the evidence of the financial crimes to both the State Bar Association and the FBI. Included were the recordings, the documentation of offshore accounts, and a comprehensive outline of their entire operation. The indictments came 2 months later. Jonathan, Robert, and 3 other attorneys were charged with multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The morning the news broke, Patricia came to our office with a bouquet of lilies. Thank you, she said simply. You gave me my life back. I accepted the flowers. You reclaimed your life yourself. We just showed you the path. After she left, Vanessa lingered in my office doorway. That's twice now for Robert, she observed. Think he'll make the connection? Does it matter? I asked. He's facing 15 years. By the time he's out, we'll be a global company. She smiled slightly. This was never just about helping women for you, was it? It was about making what happened to you mean something. Perhaps, I admitted. But does the motivation matter if the outcome helps people? I suppose not. She turned to leave, then stopped. Just make sure revenge doesn't consume you. You have too much to offer the world. That night, I sat on my deck overlooking the lake, watching the sunset paint the water gold. I thought about Robert facing his second prison term, about Jonathan losing his family and freedom, about Patricia beginning her new life, about the women we'd helped and those we hadn't reached yet. I'd built something meaningful from... My siblings always treated me like the black sheep. Then I watched their faces when the lawyer said I was the only one in Grandma's will. The conference room went dead silent. My brother's jaw actually dropped. My sister grabbed the table edge like she might faint. Dad turned to stare at me with this look I'd never seen before, pure shock mixed with something uglier. There must be some mistake, my sister finally managed. Attorney Reynolds adjusted his glasses. No mistake. Mrs. Caldwell was very clear about her wishes. She revised this will 3 months before her passing. I sat perfectly still, trying not to smile, trying not to cry, trying to process that Grandma had actually done it. For context, I was the family disappointment. Dropped out of law school to become a baker. Never married the right kind of person. Lived in a cramped studio instead of the suburbs. Wore thrift store clothes to family dinners where everyone else showed up in designer labels. Every holiday, they'd corner me with the same question. When are you going to get a real job? Why don't you want more for yourself? Don't you feel embarrassed? Meanwhile, my brother worked at Dad's firm. My sister married a surgeon. They had the house, the cars, the perfect kids. They were everything I wasn't, and they never let me forget it. But here's what they didn't know. For the last 6 years, I visited Grandma every single Tuesday. Not for money, not because I wanted anything. Because she was lonely, and I actually liked talking to her. I'd bring fresh pastries from my bakery. We'd drink tea and play gin rummy. She'd tell me stories about her life during the war, about the bakery she'd owned before she married Grandpa, about dreams she'd buried to become the perfect wife. You remind me of who I used to be, she told me once, before I started caring what everyone thought. My siblings visited maybe twice a year, Christmas and her birthday. They'd stay for an hour, take photos for social media, then leave, too busy with their important lives. Attorney Reynolds cleared his throat. The estate is valued at approximately $2.3 million. This includes the brownstone in Brooklyn, the investment portfolio, and various other assets. My sister's face went white. That's impossible. Grandma always said we'd split everything equally. She changed her mind, Reynolds said simply. My brother stood up so fast his chair fell over. This is bullshit. She was probably senile. We'll contest this. You're welcome to try, Reynolds replied calmly. But Mrs. Caldwell had a full psychiatric evaluation 1 month before revising her will. She was completely sound of mind. She also left letters explaining her reasoning. He slid an envelope across the table to me. My hand shook as I picked it up. Grandma's handwriting on the front. Just my name. Nothing else. Don't open that here, Dad said sharply. We need to discuss this as a family. For the first time in my life, I looked my father dead in the eye and said, no. I stood up, tucked the letter in my bag. Where do you think you're going? My sister demanded. Home, I said. Attorney Reynolds has my contact information if you need anything. I walked toward the door. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Wait, my brother called after me. His voice had changed, softer now, desperate. Let's talk about this. We're family. I paused at the doorway, turned back. They were all staring at me. These people who'd spent decades making me feel small, making me question my worth, making me believe I was the problem. Funny, I said quietly. You only remember we're family when you need something. I left them sitting there, drove straight to the cemetery, sat beside Grandma's grave for an hour, finally opened her letter. The first line made my blood run cold. There's something about your father I never told anyone. Something that changes everything you know about this family. I couldn't fit what happens next in this short video. Watch the rest down below. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the letter. I read it again, then again. It couldn't be true. It was impossible. But Grandma had written it in her careful script, dated it, even had it notarized. She knew exactly what she was doing. Your father isn't who you think he is, the letter continued. He isn't even a Caldwell by blood. I should have told you this years ago, but I was protecting someone. Now that I'm gone, you deserve the truth. I sat there in the grass, the autumn wind picking up around me. A maintenance worker was trimming hedges 3 rows over. Normal life continuing while mine was falling apart. The letter explained everything. Dad was adopted. Not legally, not officially. Just taken in when he was 6 years old after his real parents died in a house fire. Grandpa had been the fire chief who'd pulled him from the burning building, the only survivor. But here's the thing. Dad's biological father had been Grandpa's business partner. And 3 weeks before that fire, Grandpa had discovered his partner was embezzling from their construction company. Nearly $1 million gone. The company almost went bankrupt. Grandpa confronted him. They fought. The partner threatened to expose something about Grandpa's past, something that would have ruined him. 2 weeks later, that convenient house fire happened. The official report called it an electrical malfunction, but Grandma found evidence in Grandpa's study years later. Plans, notes, timing details. I can't prove your grandfather set that fire, Grandma wrote, but I know my husband. I know what he was capable of when someone threatened what was his, and I know the guilt ate him alive for the rest of his life. She explained how Grandpa became obsessed with raising Dad, gave him everything, spoiled him, treated him like a prince, like he was trying to make up for murdering the boy's real parents. Your father never knew, the letter said. and I never told him. But he grew up with all of Grandpa's worst traits, that ruthlessness, that need for control, that belief that he's entitled to whatever he wants no matter who it hurts. I felt sick. I'm leaving everything to you, Grandma continued, because you're the only one who broke free from this family's poison. Your brother became a lawyer like your father, learning to manipulate and intimidate. Your sister married for status and money, just like I did, but you chose a different path. The letter ended with, use this money to build something good, something that isn't stained by what this family has done. And whatever you do, don't let your father control it. He'll destroy you to get it back. Just like his father destroyed his business partner. I drove home in a daze. My apartment felt different when I walked in. Smaller, like I'd outgrown it in the span of a few hours. I made tea with shaking hands, sat at my tiny kitchen table, reread the letter. My phone started buzzing. Dad, then my brother, then my sister, then Dad again. I turned it off. The next morning, I woke up to someone pounding on my door. Open up, my brother's voice. I know you're in there. I looked through the peephole. He wasn't alone. My sister stood behind him, arms crossed. I didn't open the door. We just want to talk, my sister called. Please, this is ridiculous. I stayed silent. They left eventually, but I knew they'd be back. I called Attorney Reynolds. Can they contest the will? They can try, he said, but it won't go anywhere. Your grandmother was extremely thorough. I've been practicing law for 30 years and I've never seen a will more airtight. What about harassment? A pause. Are they harassing you? Not yet, but I think they will. Document everything, he advised. Every call, every text, every interaction. If it escalates, we'll get a restraining order. That afternoon, I went to the bank, moved all of Grandma's money into a new account under my name only. The banker's eyes widened when she saw the balance. Congratulations, she said carefully. This is quite an inheritance. I didn't feel like celebrating. On my way out, I stopped at Grandma's brownstone, the building where she lived for 42 years. 4 stories of Victorian architecture in one of Brooklyn's best neighborhoods. I used the key Reynolds had given me, stepped inside. Everything was exactly how I remembered. The Persian rugs she'd bought on her honeymoon, the grandfather clock that chimed every hour, the smell of lavender and old books. I walked through each room slowly, the parlor where we'd played cards, the kitchen where she'd taught me to bake her famous chocolate chip cookies, the sunroom where she'd told me about her bakery, about the dreams she'd given up. In her bedroom, I found more letters, a whole box of them, tucked in the back of her closet. Most were from Grandpa, love letters from their early years. Then later ones, darker ones, where he begged her forgiveness for things he couldn't name. I did what I had to do, he wrote in one, for our future, for our family. God forgive me. There were also letters from Dad's biological mother, photos of her holding infant Dad, smiling at the camera. She'd been beautiful, young, innocent. I sat on Grandma's bed and cried. My phone buzzed. I'd turned it back on out of habit. A text from Dad. We need to talk. This isn't over. I deleted it. Another from my sister. You're being selfish. Grandma would be ashamed. I deleted that too. Then one from my brother that made my stomach drop. I know what's in that letter. Dad told us everything. You don't know the whole story. I stared at that message for a long time. Dad knew? How? I called Reynolds again. Did my father ever have access to his mother's papers, the letters I received? No, Reynolds said firmly. Those were sealed. Only you have seen them. Then how would he know what's in them? Reynolds was quiet for a moment. Either he's bluffing or your grandmother told him something before she died. But the letter said she never told him. Maybe she changed her mind at the end. Or maybe your father is lying to manipulate you, which seems more likely, based on what you've told me. I hung up and sat in the dark. 3 days passed. I didn't go to my bakery, didn't answer calls, just stayed in Grandma's brownstone, reading through her things, trying to understand my family. I found Grandpa's insurance claim from the fire, the one that killed Dad's parents. The payout had been massive, enough to save the construction company and then some. I found bank statements showing mysterious cash withdrawals in the weeks before the fire, $50,000 pulled out in increments. I found a newspaper clipping about the fire. Tragic accident claims 2 lives, the headline read. But someone, probably Grandma, had written in the margin, no accident. God help us all. On the 4th day, Dad showed up, not at my apartment, at the brownstone. He was standing outside when I opened the curtains, just standing there, staring up at the windows. When he saw me, he didn't wave, didn't smile, just pointed at the door. I should have called the police. Instead, I let him in. You've been avoiding us, he said as he walked past me into the parlor. I've been processing. Processing, he laughed bitterly. That's a nice way of saying you're being difficult. I'm being difficult? You're the one harassing me. He turned to face me. Do you have any idea what you've done? What this looks like? My mother leaves everything to you, nothing to her own son, nothing to her grandchildren. How do you think that feels? I don't know, Dad. How did it feel all those years you made me feel like garbage? Oh, here we go. He ran his hand through his hair. Poor you. The victim. Always the victim. I never said I was a victim. You didn't have to. You wear it like a badge. He started pacing. You know what your problem is? You're weak. You always have been. Can't handle real pressure, so you run away and bake cookies. Get out. I'm not finished. Get out of this house. Now. He stopped pacing, looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. This is my mother's house, he said slowly. I grew up here. I have more right to be here than you do. Actually, you don't. It's mine now. And you're trespassing. Something shifted in his expression. The anger melted into something colder. Did you read her letter? He asked quietly. I didn't answer. I'll take that as a yes. He sat down in Grandpa's old armchair. Let me guess. She told you about the fire, about my real parents. About Grandpa's suspicions. Suspicions? That's what you're calling it? Because that's what they were. She had no proof, just paranoid theories from an old woman who watched too many detective shows. She had documents, bank statements, insurance claims, circumstantial. He waved his hand dismissively. You could make anyone look guilty with the right selection of evidence. Grandpa was a good man. He saved my life, raised me as his own son, and you're sitting here in his house judging him? I'm not judging. Yes, you are. You're judging all of us. Looking down from your moral high ground because you bake bread and live like a peasant. You think that makes you better than us? I never said that. You don't have to. It's in everything you do. The way you dress, the way you talk, the way you rejected everything this family offered you. He leaned forward. But here's what you're not getting. That money, those assets, they came from Grandpa's business. The business my real father nearly destroyed. If Grandpa did set that fire, he was protecting what was his, what was rightfully his. I felt cold all over. You're actually defending. I'm being realistic. The world isn't black and white. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. He killed people. Your real parents. People who were stealing from him, who threatened his livelihood. Dad stood up. You want to know what Grandma told me before she died? She said I was weak, that I'd become too much like Grandpa, that the cycle had to be broken. Maybe she was right. No, his voice went hard. She was a bitter old woman who never forgave her husband for being successful, for doing what needed to be done. He walked toward the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. You have 2 weeks, he said without turning around. 2 weeks to come to your senses and distribute that inheritance fairly, or I'll make your life very difficult. Is that a threat? It's a fact. He looked back at me. I'm a partner at one of the best law firms in the state. I have resources you can't imagine, and I will use every single one of them to prove you manipulated an old woman with dementia. She had a psychiatric evaluation. Evaluations can be challenged. Doctors can be questioned. Wills can be overturned. He smiled, and it made my skin crawl. 2 weeks. Think about it. He left. I locked the door behind him, then checked every window, then called Reynolds. He's bluffing, Reynolds said after I told him everything. He has no grounds for a contest, but document what he said. Get security cameras installed, and consider staying somewhere else for a while. I'm not running away from my own inheritance. It's not running away. It's being smart. Your father sounds unstable. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. Every car that passed outside felt like a threat. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. My sister. I'm sorry about Dad, he's just hurt. We all are. Can we please talk? Just the two of us? I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, what do you want? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I want to understand. Why you? Why did Grandma choose you? Because I was there. I wrote back. Every week. For 6 years. We had lives. Responsibilities. We couldn't just. Neither could I. I made time. A long pause. Then, fair enough. But do you really need all of it? Couldn't we split it? Even just a little? And there it was. The real reason for the text. No, I wrote. Grandma made her choice. I'm respecting it. Then you're being cruel and selfish. And exactly what Dad always said you were. I turned off my phone. The next week was a nightmare. My brother filed a formal contest to the will. My sister started a social media campaign, painting me as the heartless grandchild who'd stolen from my loving family. People I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me. How could you do this to your siblings? Family should come first. Your grandmother must be rolling in her grave. They posted old family photos, Christmas morning, birthday parties, everyone smiling, the perfect family. What they didn't post were the photos of Grandma alone in her hospital bed while they vacationed in Cancun, or me in the background of their selfies. Always excluded, always other. I hired a publicist. She advised me to stay silent, let the lawyers handle everything. But silence felt like surrender. So I posted my own photo. Me and Grandma at her kitchen table playing cards, both of us laughing at something. The timestamp showed it was taken 8 months ago, a Tuesday afternoon. I didn't write a caption. Didn't need to. The comments flooded in, some supportive, most vicious. Then someone shared a photo I'd never seen before. Grandma's friend had posted it. Me and Grandma at her 85th birthday party. I was holding her hand. My siblings were in the background, checking their phones. This girl visited every week, the friend wrote. I know because I was there too. The rest of the family couldn't be bothered. More people started commenting. Nurses from Grandma's hospital stays. Neighbors who'd seen me coming and going. Even the mailman wrote about how I'd pick up her packages when she couldn't get to the door. The narrative started to shift. My sister deleted her posts. My brother went quiet on social media. But Dad doubled down. He went to the news. Local channels, newspapers, anyone who'd listen. My mother was sick, he told them. Confused. This is clearly elder abuse. The reporters ate it up. Family torn apart by inheritance dispute made the evening news. They interviewed Dad in his expensive suit, sitting in his expensive office, looking devastated. They tried to interview me too. I declined. Reynolds advised me to lay low. Let them hang themselves. Your father's overplaying his hand. He was right. The psychiatric evaluation that proved Grandma's competence became public record. Dad's legal team tried to suppress it, but it was too late. Woman sound of mind. When writing controversial will, the headline read. The article included quotes from the psychiatrist. Mrs. Caldwell was lucid, articulate, and very clear about her intentions. Dad's case started falling apart, but he wasn't done. Not even close. 2 weeks after his visit to the brownstone, I got a call from my landlord. I'm sorry, he said, but I need you to move out by the end of the month. What? Why? I'm selling the building. New owners want to renovate. It was too convenient. Too sudden. I did some digging, found out my brother's firm was representing the buyer, found out the sale price was well above market value. They were pushing me out. Fine. I had Grandma's brownstone. I could live there. Except the next day, I got a notice from the city. Violations found during inspection. Apparently, the brownstone needed $50,000 in immediate repairs or it would be condemned. Strange how no one had noticed these violations during the 42 years Grandma lived there. I hired my own inspector. Nothing wrong with this building, he said. Someone's lying. I filed a complaint with the city. Got nowhere. The inspector who'd found the violations was someone's cousin, someone's friend, someone who owed someone a favor. Dad's network was everywhere. My bakery was next. Health inspections every week. Fire code violations. Parking complaints. I was spending more time dealing with bureaucracy than actually baking. My regulars started to notice. What's going on? They'd ask. Why are there always inspectors here? I couldn't explain without sounding paranoid. Slowly, business dropped off. People didn't want to support a place that seemed constantly on the verge of shutdown. I was bleeding money. The inheritance could cover it, but I refused to use Grandma's money to fight Dad's harassment. That was exactly what he wanted. One night, I was closing up the bakery when someone knocked on the glass. A woman I didn't recognize. We're closed, I called out. I know, I just wanted to talk. She held up her hands. I'm not a reporter, not a lawyer, just someone who knows your family. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She was maybe 60, well-dressed, with kind eyes. My name is Patricia, she said. I worked for your grandfather, back in the 80s. My heart started pounding. What do you want? I want to tell you something your grandmother never knew. Something I should have said 30 years ago. She sat down at one of the small tables. I was your grandfather's secretary when the fire happened. I saw things, heard things. I sat down across from her. Your grandfather was a good man in many ways, Patricia said carefully. But he was also ruthless. And when his partner started stealing, he became obsessed. I watched him plan, saw him hire people, heard him on phone calls. Hire people to do what? To set the fire, to make it look like an accident. She pulled an envelope from her purse. These are copies of documents I kept. Phone records, payment receipts, names. I took the envelope with shaking hands. Why are you giving me this now? Because I've watched your father become exactly like his father. And I've watched you fight back, alone, against people with power and money and connections. She stood up. Your grandmother was a good woman. She deserved better than she got. And so do you. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Fear. Your grandfather scared me. When he died, I thought it was over. But then I saw your father following the same path. She headed for the door. Use those documents however you need to. Just promise me one thing. What? Break the cycle. Don't become what they are. She left before I could ask any more questions. I opened the envelope. Inside were photocopies of bank records, phone logs, handwritten notes in Grandpa's writing, all of it pointing to one thing, premeditated murder. I drove straight to Reynolds' office. He looked through everything with increasing disbelief. This is explosive. If this is authenticated, it's proof of first-degree murder. The statute of limitations doesn't apply because I don't care about prosecuting a dead man, I interrupted. Can I use this to stop Dad? Reynolds looked at me. You could use this to destroy your entire family. Are you sure that's what you want? I thought about it. Really thought about it. My siblings, for all their faults, didn't know about any of this. They were just spoiled and entitled. Not evil. But Dad knew. He'd known all along. And he was using the same tactics. The same ruthlessness. The same willingness to crush anyone in his way. I want him to stop, I said. That's all. I just want to live my life. Reynolds made copies of everything. Then he called Dad's lawyer. We need to meet, he said calmly. All parties present. Tomorrow morning. And tell your client to bring his checkbook. The meeting was tense. Dad showed up with 2 lawyers and my brother. My sister declined to come. Reynolds spread the documents across the table. This is what we have, he said simply. Proof that your father's adopted father committed murder. Proof that the inheritance you're all fighting over was built on blood money. Proof that could reopen a cold case and destroy your family's reputation forever. Dad's face went pale. Now, Reynolds continued, my client has no interest in going public with this information. She simply wants to be left alone. No more harassment. No more legal challenges. No more attempts to undermine her business or her housing situation. One of Dad's lawyers started to speak. Dad held up his hand to silence him. What do you want? Dad asked me directly. I want you to drop the will contest. I want you to stop interfering with my life. And I want you to apologize to Grandma's memory for how you treated her in her final years. That's it? That's it. He stared at me for a long moment. And if I refuse, then I go to the press. I go to the police. I go to everyone. And I make sure the world knows exactly what kind of man your father was. What kind of man you are. The room went silent. Finally, Dad nodded. Fine, we'll drop it. Put it in writing, Reynolds said, sliding a document across the table. Sign it. Have it notarized. And then we're done. Dad read through it carefully. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. He signed. One more thing, I said as they stood to leave. I'm setting up a foundation, in Grandma's name. It'll help families who can't afford elder care, who can't visit their loved ones because they're working 3 jobs just to survive. Dad stopped at the door. Using my mother's money? Using our family's blood money to do something good, like Grandma wanted. He left without another word. 3 months later, the legal challenges were dropped. The harassment stopped. I was able to refinance the brownstone and fix it up properly. My bakery recovered. I never spoke to Dad again. My brother tried to reach out once, but I wasn't interested. My sister sent a card on my birthday. I didn't respond. Some bridges are better burned. The foundation launched on what would have been Grandma's 90th birthday. We helped our first family 2 weeks later, an elderly woman whose grandkids lived 3 states away and couldn't afford to visit. We paid for their flights, Set up video calls, made sure she wasn't alone. The media covered it. Baker turns inheritance into legacy of love, one headline read. Dad's name wasn't mentioned. Neither was Grandpa's. Just Grandma's and mine. I still visit her grave every Tuesday. Bring flowers. Tell her about the foundation, about the families we've helped. You were right, I tell her, about breaking the cycle, about choosing kindness over cruelty. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if she'd told Dad the truth before she died, if he'd had a chance to process it differently, to choose a different path. But I think she knew he'd become too much like Grandpa, knew the poison had already taken root. Last week I ran into my sister at a grocery store. She saw me first, turned to walk the other way, then stopped, turned back. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for everything. You were right. We were terrible to you. Yeah, you were. Do you think, she hesitated, do you think we could ever fix this? Our relationship? I thought about it. Thought about all the years of mockery and exclusion. Thought about how quickly she'd turned on me when money was involved. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday, but not now. She nodded, looked like she might cry. I understand. For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you're doing. The foundation. It's beautiful. Thank you. We stood there for a moment. Two strangers who used to be sisters. Take care of yourself, she said finally. You too. She left. I finished my shopping. Went home to the brownstone that was finally starting to feel like mine. The place where Grandma had lived. Where she'd dreamed. Where she'd made the hard choice to tell the truth, even if it meant tearing apart her family. I found one more letter last month, tucked inside her recipe book. The chocolate chip cookie recipe she'd taught me when I was 8. If you're reading this, it said, you've chosen to stay, to fight. I'm so proud of you. But remember this. The money isn't the real inheritance. The real inheritance is the choice to be different, to be better, to break the cycle. Your father never had that choice. He was raised by a murderer who showered him with guilt disguised as love. How could he have turned out any other way? But you had me, and I had you. Two people who chose each other, who chose love without condition, who chose to show up, week after week, year after year. That's the real wealth. That's what I'm leaving you. Don't let them take it away. With all my love, Grandma. I taped that letter to my refrigerator. Read it every morning while I drink my coffee. The foundation is growing. We've helped over 200 families now, connected grandparents with grandchildren, paid for visits, covered expenses, made sure no one has to grow old alone. Some of the volunteers are people who visited their own grandparents every week, who understood what it meant to show up, to be present. We don't accept money from just anyone. We vet our donors carefully. Make sure their wealth doesn't come from the same place as ours did. It's not perfect. Nothing is, but it's something. My bakery is doing better than ever. I hired 2 employees, expanded the menu, started teaching baking classes on weekends. One of my students is a teenager whose grandmother just died. She's learning to make the same cookies her grandmother used to bake. This is the last thing I have of her, she told me crying as she mixed the dough. The last recipe we made together. I helped her measure the flour. Then we'll make sure you get it exactly right. So every time you bake these, she's with you. That's what Grandma gave me. Not just money, not just property, but the understanding that presence is everything, that showing up matters, that love is measured in Tuesday afternoons and card games and fresh pastries. I sometimes wonder what Dad thinks about when he sees the news coverage of the foundation. If he feels anything, regret, anger, pride, probably nothing. People like him don't reflect, don't question. They just keep moving forward, trampling whatever gets in their way. My brother called once, drunk, late at night. Do you hate us? He asked. No, I said, and I meant it. I just don't want you in my life. That's worse than hate. Maybe, but it's honest. He hung up. Haven't heard from him since. The brownstone is beautiful now. I kept Grandma's furniture, her rugs, her books, added my own touches slowly. The kitchen is mine. Professional-grade oven, marble countertops, every tool I could need. I bake there sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, when I need to feel close to her. The rhythm of it calms me. Mixing, kneading, waiting, the same way it calmed Grandma all those years ago when she ran her own bakery, before she gave it up. Before she became someone else's idea of perfect. Don't make my mistakes, she'd told me once. Don't give up who you are for someone else's approval. I didn't, and now I never will. The foundation's first anniversary gala is next month. We're honoring caregivers, the people who show up, who do the hard work, who love without expecting anything in return. I'm giving a speech. Reynolds helped me write it, told me to keep it short, keep it honest. Tell them why it matters, he said. Tell them about your Tuesdays. So I will. I'll stand up in front of all those people. Some of them will know my story. Most won't. And I'll tell them about an old woman who taught me to bake, who taught me to play cards, who taught me that real wealth has nothing to do with money. I'll tell them about choosing to show up, week after week, year after year, not because you have to, because you want to. I'll tell them that inheritance isn't about what you're given. It's about what you choose to do with it. And I'll tell them about breaking cycles, about refusing to become what your family expects, about having the courage to be kind in a world that rewards cruelty. Grandma would be proud. I know she would. Because I finally understand what she was trying to tell me all along. The money was never the point. The house was never the point. The point was proving that love, real love, can't be measured in dollars or real estate or social status. It's measured in Tuesday afternoons, in fresh pastries, in showing up. And I showed up, every single week, for 6 years. That's why she left me everything. Not to punish my siblings, not to hurt my father, but to reward the one person who understood that some things matter more than money. Some things like presence, like consistency, like unconditional love, are priceless. And you can't buy them. You can't inherit them. You can't steal them. You can only earn them, one Tuesday at a time. I'm sitting at Grandma's grave right now. It's Tuesday, like always. I brought her favorite flowers, lilacs, and a fresh batch of chocolate chip cookies. I miss you, I tell her. Every day, but I'm doing okay. Better than okay. I'm doing what you taught me. I'm showing up. The wind picks up, rustles the leaves on the oak tree that shades her plot. For just a moment, I swear I can smell her perfume, that lavender scent she always wore. Thank you, I whisper, for everything, for choosing me, for trusting me, for teaching me what really matters. I sit there until the sun starts to set, until the cemetery groundskeeper makes his final rounds. Then I drive back to the brownstone, back to the life Grandma gave me, the life I built from her gift. Not the money, not the property, but the gift of knowing I was enough, exactly as I was. Black sheep and all. That's the real inheritance. And it's worth more than $2.3 million. It's worth everything.